Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to say this has been really amazing looking at all the presentations. Great job, everyone. I don't think I would have been able to accomplish this when I was your age. So really kudos to everyone. Now I'm going to make this about Grace. I am a technical project manager at Umara Health. This is my first time mentoring with Magic, and it has been super rewarding. Grace is a rising senior at the Marymount School of New York. I really think she's a classic achiever in every sense of the word. Very hardworking, motivated, multifaceted, driven. I think Grace and I were able to connect really well because we realized we're not just similar in how we solve problems, but also in our love for reality TV, which we learned very late in the process. Grace showed a ton of passion, dedication, grit. She knew she wanted to learn a new skill set. She made it happen. And with some great insights to share through the difficulties along the way within a 10-week time frame. So I'm really, really impressed and very proud. I'm really looking forward to the presentation. I think you guys are going to enjoy it just as much as I have enjoyed having her as a mentee. So over to Grace.
Hi, well, thank you so much, Priyanka. So Priyanka, as she said, she's a technical project manager at Umara Health, and she's very passionate about working with data. And she's originally from India, but now lives in the Bay Area. And some of her hobbies include watching movies and reality TV, as well as reading. And again, it was been so great to work with Priyanka because we really connected early on, and it's been, she's been so helpful through my whole learning process. So at the start, I knew I wanted to do something within computer science. However, I had no experience with this. So that's when Priyanka brought up SQL, which is a database management language that has a relatively easy syntax to learn since it's in English. And this would help me to understand the logic behind writing code in a short time frame. And so from there, my project grew into 3 goals, which was learn a new language, learn to work with data, and then learn to tell a story with data. So first, I learned the syntax using an interactive website. And then Priyanka and I set up SQL on my computer, including Postgres, which is a database management system to support SQL on my computer, and pgadmin, which is a tool for Postgres that allowed me to see my code more clearly and see the output data as well. And then I worked on applying the syntax I had learned, and I figured out how to create databases, tables, columns, load CSV files, and external data and more up through an intermediate level of SQL, such as joins and calculating within queries. So after having enough base knowledge, I wanted to do a larger data analysis project that would allow me to become more fluent with SQL and apply what I had learned. So that's how I landed on COVID-19 and race in New York City. So I wanted to look at COVID-19 in New York City because I've lived here my whole life. And I knew there was a lot of easily accessible data on this subject. So I began by seeing what factors I could feasibly analyze in this time frame. So the University of Michigan identifies that higher case, hospitalization, and death rates of COVID-19 can be affected by race, age, and socioeconomic characteristics such as population density and poverty rate. So I started with race, and I found that there is, and on all my slides, the code is at the bottom, and then my charts are at the top that correlate with it. So I found that there's a much higher case and death rate among the non-Hispanic Black and Hispanic population in New York City. So then followed by non-Hispanic white, and the lowest being non-Hispanic Asian. So as race and poverty are usually related, I wanted to check this data next. And though, yes, as this chart shows, COVID-19 cases and deaths both increase as the level of poverty increases, this doesn't tell the complete story. As shown in this graph, in New York City, non-Hispanic Asians also have a similar level of poverty to both non-Hispanic Black and Hispanic persons. And however, as I mentioned in the first graph, non-Hispanic Asians have the lowest case and death rate out of the 4 race groups I mentioned in New York City. So this indicates that poverty is not the only factor here. And though poverty could have a larger impact on both the Hispanic and non-Hispanic Black people in New York City with COVID-19, it's probable that poverty is not the greatest determinant in terms of the higher case and death rates in these 2 race groups. So my next hypothesis was that maybe there is a geographical disparity and that the boroughs with higher case and death rates would also have a higher Black and Hispanic population. So in looking at the boroughs, I found that the Bronx had the highest rates out of all the other boroughs, and that the Bronx also has the largest percent of total population that is Hispanic / Latino and Black / African American out of all the boroughs as well. So proving my hypothesis correct. So, and before I could come to the conclusion that the Bronx had a higher case and death rate because of the higher percent of these two race groups, I had to rule out some of the other factors I mentioned previously that could cause a spike in cases in the Bronx. So firstly, age. Since we know that as age increases, so does the case and death rate of COVID-19 in New York City, my next hypothesis was that maybe the Bronx had an older population, which could cause a spike in cases and deaths. I calculated the percent over 65 of each of the boroughs and determined that the Bronx actually has the lowest percent over 65 out of all the other boroughs, and is even lower than the citywide average, meaning an older population would not be a factor in the heightened case and death rates in the Bronx. So next, since we know COVID-19 spreads from a close contact between people, I hypothesized that the Bronx might have the highest population density, which could cause the heightened case and death rates. And though the Bronx is ranked third out of the 5 boroughs, Manhattan, interestingly, is ranked first, which is the borough with the lowest case and death rates of all the boroughs, meaning population density is not playing a large role in the borough-wide cases and deaths from COVID-19. So this led me to the conclusion that race was the major factor in the increased cases and deaths in the Bronx, meaning that the Hispanic / Latino and Black / African American people in the Bronx are most affected by COVID-19 in New York City, and that these people are at high risk of infection and death, as well as hospitalization as well, which I wasn't looking at in these charts, but hospitalization goes along with it as well. And so this would prove the hypothesis of boroughs with more Black or Hispanic people of color would therefore be more affected by COVID-19 in New York City. And most of the data supports this claim as the case and death rates increase as the Hispanic and Black population increases in each borough, in all the boroughs except for Staten Island. So though Staten Island has a approximately 60% white population, it has the second highest case rate out of all the other boroughs. So I wanted to see if it was also the non-Hispanic Black and Hispanic population being affected in this borough. And I found that their non-Hispanic Black and Hispanic population had the 2 highest death rates, and the non-Hispanic Black population had the highest case rate, followed by non-Hispanic White and then non-Hispanic Latino. I mean, not non-Hispanic Latino, Hispanic / Latino. And so, however, those were pretty close in their numbers as well. So then I wanted to see if there were certain neighborhoods that were more affected than others, and if that then correlated with race. So as you can see in this chart, there were zip codes that had a much higher case rate than the others. So the next step was then to see the racial makeups of these zip codes. So firstly, I found that the neighborhoods with the highest case rates also had the lowest white population, and vice versa as well. The lowest case rates had the largest white population. So those two were inversely related. And both the Hispanic and Black populations had the opposite data because as case rates decreased, so did the population of that race group as an overall trend. And though in either case, it's not directly proportional, it's correlated. So then what can we learn from all of this data I just threw at you is that areas with a larger Black / African American or Hispanic / Latino population also have a higher case rate in New York City. So this unfortunately was not that surprising, especially for non-Hispanic Black people, as systemic racism in our country affects public health in a large way outside of COVID-19 as well. And some of the examples of this include, but are not limited to, that the statistics that Black Americans are 40% more likely to die of breast cancer and 80% more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes. And those are just 2 examples of many. And I hope in the future to continue to learn about these health disparities and ways to confront them and make change. So that's kind of the end of my lab demo. And now I'm going to talk about kind of takeaways with my magical experience. So some highlights was that I learned a new language and how to apply it, which I didn't think I would be able to do at the beginning of this. And I had incredible guidance from Priyanka about both my project and my future in STEM in college and beyond. And then this presentation has been incredible to kind of see the hard work come together, and being able to like make all my graphs and then see all the data come together was really exciting for me. And then I learned that it's one thing for me, it's really the best to learn through experiential learning. I could learn the syntax as much as I wanted to, but then actually being able to apply it to a project made me become much more fluent and actually understand what I was doing and what I could draw from it. And that I can get really down a hole with data and to follow one line of reasoning and get super distracted from my main goal. And that it's important to keep in mind both, doing something I'm super interested in, but then not distracting myself from the main goal as I'm, worked along with my project. And the one challenge we had was getting the system for SQL on my computer. I had never really done this before, so I needed a lot of help from Priyanka on this one. But in the end, that was kind of upfront at the beginning, and then it made everything else much more streamlined. So again, thank you to Priyanka, and thank you to everyone who's helped me with this project. And now I'll open it up to any questions